people always ask me like where I see this going, and I always say I wish I knew. I could probably like have more money if I like could predict the future. And we've had these ups and downs, and people are, I feel like, really down on it now. Like, oh, it's like, but people have been saying we're dead literally since 2016. When Battle Frog went away in 2016, people were like, oh, well, OCR is definitely dead. So we are not. And I don't think it's going anywhere. I think, I just did a Tough Mudder in England. It was fantastic. You know what I mean?
No whining.
No quitting.
Overcome.
Community. Teamwork.
Tough Mudder.
Tougher together.
Hey, to all my Mudder family, OCR brothers and sisters, and to you listening right now. You're my peeps also. We do share this world together. I am your mirror man and host of Tough Mudder's No Excuses podcast, Sean Corvelle. In this episode, I get to talk to a friend and one of the most knowledgeable people in the OCR universe, Matt B. Davis. We explore the journey and growth of the OCR world and his involvement with it. We talk about his stand-up comedy days, where he found his voice and honed his communication skills, which is apparent in his relationship with the top athletes in this sport, as well as the community. We get his opinion of WTM and the other major competition events, and we talk about his greatest achievement of all, being a father. All that and more in this very fun conversation with Matt B. Davis on No Excuses. All right, Matt B. Davis. So, one, thank you for doing this interview. Thank you for encouraging me to do these interviews by myself. I usually have help on here, somebody technical-wise, but you said, Sean, you can do it. You can do this. I know you. And you're not the idiot that you think you are, even though I think I am. But and you are my official first interview with me being my own tech, my own producer by myself here. But I feel safe in your arms, Matt, because you've been doing this for a while.
Well, thank you. It's like it's my spiritual payback. You were my first, Tough Mudder. You were my introduction to the Tough Mudder world way back in February of 2012, right? So now I get to help you out. There you go. See how it works?
Yeah. I actually came on 2011, and from what I read about you, you've been doing the whole OCR thing since 2010. I think it said that you did like a Warrior Dash.
I did do a May 2010 Warrior Dash, and I'm very proud of that. It was like the 4th or 5th Warrior Dash ever. But I wasn't bit by the bug yet. But when I did that Tough Mudder in February 2012, that's where 10 effing plus years ago, that's where the magic happened.
Isn't that was quick, isn't it?
10 really years? Quick. I'm 50 years old now. I know you're even older than me, but I'm turning 50 has been a big deal for me. I've been like, I don't know, it's been a weird thing.
Has it really?
Yeah, I just kind of can't stop thinking about it. I don't know, something about just like 40 feels like something, and 45 kind of, but 50 is like, all right, we're 100% closer to the end than the beginning at this point. Like, there's no.
Yeah. Okay, so let me come back to that in a sec. For people that don't know who you are, Matt, I got the thing down here. I always have you guys' websites or Google you guys, so that way I don't have to work. I'll just send my money to Google.
Right.
Matt is the face of obstacle racing media, and widely considered the obstacle course industry expert. I've said that about you even before I read it here.
Thank you.
His office, they say knee deep. Forget that part. Matt doesn't just write, talk, or produce obstacle racing content. He lives it. I know that for sure. That's true. I can say. Since doing his first Warrior Dash back in 2010. Like we just talked about, he's completed over 130 obstacle races of all distances. I believe that too, even though
that's way more old. By the way, I haven't updated that. I think I'm over 200 at this point. You gotta be that
past right? Campbell. I think you've beat Campbell now.
If you're playing a drinking game, the first Jim Campbell reference mentioned at 6 minutes into the podcast.
Now, I don't know who wrote this one about you, but they got this from me. I've said this about you. Matt has had his fingers on the pulse of the sport of obstacle racing from all perspectives, be it elite athlete, weekend warriors, and first-time race participants. I've always said that about you. I said that to Tough Mudder about you. I've said that to anybody that asks about you. I'm like, this guy, and now that I just met Yancey, I would put Yancey in there also from just talking to him. But with you, I've always felt that. You and I have talked about it, man. You've been, I don't know, I guess when you first did that Warrior Dash, you're like, oh, I'm all in. What was it? Why so much? What motivated you to get so deep into this?
Well, so first of all, I think shout out my first business partner, Christian Griffith. I'm pretty sure wrote that. I may have edited it over time, but it's always good to have somebody else write your bio. You know what I mean?
And even if you write it yourself, just tell people someone else did it.
No, but I think it's good. He gave that perspective. But I think, as I think will come up on this program between you and I, those of us that have been in the trenches since day one, we didn't choose it. It chose us. You know what I mean? Like, this thing is only really that old, right? 2011, 2012. Yes, we know Tough Guy existed. Yes, we know that military obstacle courses, but as a sport, as a thing, as an entity, as an industry, those of us that got in early, we got bit by, whether it was through Mutter or Spartan or a death race or one of these things, got like Yancey, I also put in that category. We found something in the events and in the community that was missing. And it started as a passion project for me. Hey, I think I'd like to talk to people about this sport. No one was doing that. Like, there wasn't any. Podcasting was much smaller in 2012. There certainly wasn't anybody doing this, talking to people. So I just got people on the phone and said, let's talk. And then it started to take on this life of its own, that I would see people at events and they're like, oh, you're the podcast guy, right? And so, that kind of is what, then at a certain point it was like, okay, I want to make this a business. How can I make money doing this? And that's, we can go into any number of angles with that, but yeah, I feel like it shows me.
Yeah. Which is my definition of success in business, or if you're doing work that you love to do and getting paid for it, able to make a living, that's success to me right there. And it wasn't enough that you ran it. And because we all, like you said, a lot of us, we all get bit by that bug. Once you run it, participate in one of them, or even just been to one, yeah, you get caught up in that fever. But it wasn't just you getting caught up in the fever that you want to come back and run it over and over again. Again, you wanted to know the people. You wanted to know the people that put this stuff on. You wanted to know the inside. Apparently, you wrote a book about OCR that's been quoted. It was called Down and Dirty, The Essential Training Guide for Obstacle Races and Mud Runs. Okay.
But see, that's what I'm saying is that I was doing this a certain amount of time and somebody reached out to me and said, you're the expert. Do you want to write a book? And I was like, okay, right? Scott came along with the documentary, Rise of the Sufferfest. Go watch that movie. It is awesome. It's a great history. I'm in it. Sean's in it. And a lot of other famous people, right? It's like, if you look at the poster, it's like Tim Ferriss, this talking head, and then us, right?
Yes.
And so he's like, well, you know the most about this sport. I should have you in this movie. And so that's what I mean by it chose me. And I think that's like the best stuff in life when you are elder, like you and I are, right? Like the best stuff that's ever come your way. Again, like I'm sure you've touched on your path to this and, Clinton calling you or whatever. And I know that story too, but it's like, you couldn't have like predicted I'm going to become, the guy at the start line of this event. You know what I mean? Like that. And then all the things that would come from it. And then people asking you to be at their weddings and to, all that stuff. So yeah, I just feel like all the stuff I was told about sort of success and about, I guess, how to be happy, like, did happen for me in this way. It just took a lot longer than I thought, man. It just took until I hit 40 to start this journey. That's all.
Yeah. Well, you're also, one, I actually did get to talk to Scott again. He was on our last episode of the No Excuses podcast. And I actually coined a phrase in my interview with him, describing him, but describing other people too. It could be described where I told him he had big doer energy. I had to borrow from Ariana, clean it up a bit. But he does, man. That boy, everything he does is just huge, This business has a lot of that. You're the face. They say you're the face of OCR magazine.
Yeah. Well, it started as the magazine, yes.
Yeah, and now with the podcast, the most popular podcast, they say, for the
Absolutely.
OCR world. Yeah, I agree, man. I'm not in competition with you. I don't go up against Muhammad Ali, or I'm not going one-on-one with Jordan, and I'm not going up against, in the OCR world, against Matt B. Davis. So, and of course, you have your own Instagram, yada, yada. And plus, you and I, we also share that we come from that comedy world. Back in the days, you were a stand-up comic. How long ago was that? How'd that one start?
Oh, my goodness. So I was just talking to somebody about Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, great. Who was a great comic.
And I just watched an old clip and I was smiling so much. And some of the punchlines I knew and some of the punchlines I didn't. And he had that style, which would later be imitated by everybody, right? Like comics love to do it, like joking with him. But then a bunch of young comics did the shitty version of him. Like there's always whoever the current is. Yeah. Like I think a lot of guys came up trying to sound like Chris Rock. A lot of people try to come up sounding like whoever the guy is.
Bobcat.
Now they're probably Bobcat, right?
Yeah.
But watching his stuff, dare I say genius. But anyway, I grew up worshiping stand-up comedy. I worshiped George Carlin. I worshiped Bill Cosby. I want to say R.I.P. Cosby. He's not dead, but we can't really talk about Cosby anymore. You know what I mean?
And he's starting his own drinks, his own brand of wine or something like that.
and it's funny. I remember I had a girlfriend when I was 18 or 19, and I would always quote them. I'd be like, "Oh, that's kind of," you know what I mean? Like a bit that described life or whatever it was. And they were like, "Why do you do that so much?" And I'm like, "Cause they're they speak to, those of us that it spoke to, it just, you know what I mean? You and I haven't had a long conversation about comedy. I don't know who your guys were, but they spoke to me. You know what I mean?"
Yeah. I started in the 80s in the San Francisco Bay Area, and right out of high school, in fact. And the person who did it for me was Michael Keaton. It was when I went.
Oh,
I
really?
know a little bit about comedy. Yeah, I'm like you. I grew up listening to Pryor and all those guys. I won't even go through the names. And then we used to go to the Punchline in the city in San Francisco. And then one night I was there with a bunch of high schoolers, and we saw Michael Keaton. He came on stage at the Punchline, and it was so great because it was that 3-act. You had your opener, you had your middle act. The middle act was hilarious. I don't even remember his name, but the guy was hilarious. And then Michael was the headliner, and he came on. And at first, it just seemed like his energy was just erratic. It was just too much, It was just like he was drugged out or something. He wasn't. I don't even want to start a room like that. But that's just his energy from what I've seen in other interviews. So he was a little bit too much for us. But then he kind of slowed down. We kind of caught up with him. And dude, after that, it was a bending over laughing. It was like you're hanging out with your best friend. And that was the night I said, I want to do this. And that's how I got into stand-up comedy. It was Michael Keaton that got me motivated. So I know where you're coming from with that one. And Mitch came through San Francisco, like a lot of the stars now and big people. They all came through from the Boston, from New York, from all these Chicago, all these big cities where comedy was strong. Atlanta became even where you're at, where these great comics were coming from. So I was really, I felt like I benefited starting in the Bay Area. Meeting these people, hearing them.
Obviously, I think Robin's the biggest name to come out of the Bay Area, but you also had, didn't you have
Dana Carvey?
Dana Gould and Dana Carvey?
Yeah.
Didn't Margaret Cho start up there?
Margaret, yep. Even Barr.
Roseanne Barr?
Yeah, Roseanne Barr came through because I remember she was on stage. She used to do this bit where she's like, "Have you ever done?" It was something gross, "Have you ever stuck your finger up your butt?" Yeah, she's like that, and then somebody would raise their hand in the audience. She goes, "Oh, you did? I was just joking." Oh. But here's what I remember of her. And I was still doing like an opener and doing the open mics, but I ran into her. She was walking around the city, and I was with my friend, and we ran into her down at the wharf. And she goes, "Oh, aren't you Sean Corvelle?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "You're so funny. You're so." She goes, "Now you're so funny." She wouldn't remember this now, but I remember that stayed with me, because she was just budding to get to where she was. I don't think she had her show yet. She didn't get down to LA yet, but all those people came through. Yeah. So
right. Well, one of the things about comedy that I love is that you can be doing it not that long and you get to open for like really famous big people, right? So I I got to open for Lewis Black, and I'd only be doing comedy a couple of years because, a lot of times the MC or the host just are kind of like, you don't have to be that good, but you like, what I mean? Like you're working hard, you're doing your thing. But it's like, I try to explain it like, you can't be doing music a couple years and open for the Stones. Like, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like right away, these guys are coming to the club. They're probably talking to you. They're probably coming. If Thursday night's the open mic, they're coming to talk to you. But anyway, the point is that I always wanted to do stand-up, but I was like terrified. Like my friends were like, you should do stand-up. We watched every HBO half-hour show that came out. We watched the MTV half-hour comedy hour. Like we all kind of loved comedy. I saw Carlin live a few times, but it was like, I'm not getting up in front of people. Are you fucking crazy? Like that's never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like for all the reasons people are scared of public speaking, right? And then a friend of mine, Dave Henson, who changed my life, he was putting on this show. He was in University of Georgia. He was putting on like a Young Democrats fundraiser with music and comedy. He knew some musicians. He knew some comedians. He said, "You're going to do it." And so I already had a notebook, dude. I had a notebook and I did it once. And I had that experience of like a third to half of the jokes worked. And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Getting that first laugh. I know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Getting those first couple laughs of like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? So that's what drove me. That's what, drove me to do. And if you ask me at any point between the time I started that was June of 95 until I stopped officially in like 10 years later, I would have been like, well, of course, this is it. Like, this is all there ever is. I'm never going to have a straight job, right? Like I can't work for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, and even though stand-up didn't quote unquote work out for me, it 100% led to where I am now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, dude. Again, we have a very similar story. Maybe this is the budding of, maybe because you and I had talked about doing a podcast together before I, started doing this one for Tough Mudder. And maybe, we need to do one with comics that I guess are athletic also, that run maybe, and well,
it's funny. Once in a while, people will send me something like, "Oh, I think Bert Kreischer is doing a Mudder. Like, you got to get him on," and stuff like that. You would have a better chance of getting on than I would if you use the Tough Mudder @Tough Mudder email. I don't think he'd respond to me.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what we're going to do, man. We'll use the Tough Mudder email. We'll drop names, all kinds of names, even if we don't know the person, just to get these guys on. But that's a conversation for another time. But the idea is that you did come through that sort of comedy, and almost like, to me, that is one of the best ways to become someone who's actually communicating to people, standing in front, talking to them. That is like one of the top 5 fears in the world, with fear of death, and maybe it's the top 2. I can't think of the other 3. So, but and it shows, because the way that you communicate, that I've seen you communicating in this OCR world, again, you're talking to the top athletes, and you're talking to the community. It's like you relate to both of them. So you were the guy that I always came to when it came to, because I didn't know the athletes like that. I was only like, I think somebody called me like the Pope of Tough Mudder, or the Pope of OCR. I only knew the people. I knew the people, not the gods. Well, and you knew them both.
Well, I think what's great about stand-up is that it does teach you like how to read a room, and definitely to like, get past certain fears. And cause I had another business before the podcast. And if you're going in to like pitch somebody and like, hey, buy my wares or advertising, whatever it is, like, listen, I got like booed off stage at the Uptown Comedy Corner. Right. So you can't scare me. You know what I'm saying? Like Like I literally, so it was only my second or third time on stage and that happened. And my friends were there and they were like, are you devastated? And I literally remember thinking, no, because if I can survive this, I can do anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like doing electroshock the first time or you know what I mean? Or doing Arctic Enema the first time. It's like, oh, fuck. Like that did not kill me. I'm good. Because no wide audience is going to boo me, right? Like I went into an all black room. It is hard. It is scary. You better bring it. And when you're new, you just, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't very good. So, you know what I mean? So anyway, so yeah, it definitely prepares you. And you know, a lot of it's like, obviously I do have like natural talent. I'm quick on my feet, like that stuff, but you can hone it more by doing stand up. Would you not agree?
I agree. I do agree. And you find and the art to it where you find yourself in this also. You find, because like you said, a lot of people, when we first start off, we sound like someone who inspired us, you know, and eventually you go and you find yourself on that stage, you find your light. And that goes, to me, that sort of you take that everywhere you go. You know, you take that if you're working at the bank then.
Do you remember Larry Miller?
Yes, I do.
So people told me I sounded like him, and it was never conscious. But people were like, you know who comics would say, regular people wouldn't, but like comics would say, like, you know who remind me of? You've got like that Larry Miller patter. And he was a comic I liked, but it wasn't like I wasn't even trying. But that's kind of like, that was the thing. Like all comics would always be like, sometimes they wouldn't know who it was. They'd be like, who's that? I'm like, oh, Larry Miller, probably, right? And he just, you know, I think that 80s kind of, I don't want to call it standard, but you know what I mean? Like, here's my
he was
setup,
very good, very
punch.
powerful, and he knew who he was. So if you ever worked with him again, and you were a young talent, you're gonna be influenced by him, man. And
right.
We got to talk again because he had one of the best stories for hell gigs that I've ever heard. You know, so we got to talk about that some other time also. But all of these guys, again, the beauty of when you did stand up and standing in front of these people, you got to find yourself, that light in you, that way that you communicate to people. And I think that's what's worked for you also in this, what you're doing now. Again, you relate to everyone. Dude, you went to a black club, you know, to do stand-up comedy. Like you said, that's hard. That's like going to church and taking over the pulpit, you know, at the black church. You know, I got this, Rev. They're like, who's this white guy?
It's one of those things I feel like when you're that young, you know what I mean? I was probably whatever, 25 or 26. You're just like, all right, I'll give this a whirl. Like now I'd be more scared to do that. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like this much longer in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're older. We look down now before we jump. Back then, we were ready to fly, man. We were taking on dragons, remember? Okay, so let's go back. I asked this of all my guests about the beginning. Sure. Little Matt. Where was Little Matt born? Where did he grow up? What was life like that got him to where he is now? Yes.
Little Matt.
Yes.
Let's see. So I was born in Brockton, Massachusetts. In 1972, 50 years ago, Nixon was president. People are listening to this going, holy f***.
It was a magical time.
We moved down south where I am now when I was 7 or 8.
Georgia.
And I honestly, I didn't want to do stand-up like because my friends said I should do it. But honestly, here's the really interesting thing. Like I also was fascinated by sportscasters. So that's kind of really what I like wanted to do, but I didn't like know there was a path. But like I really liked Bob Costas. You know what I mean? I really liked John Madden. I really liked Cosell, right? So this is one of those things for me where like my dream came true way later, right? Because that's what I'm doing now essentially is being a sportscaster a lot of times and covering the sport, a really, really niche sport. But it's almost like I can't even tell you why. I just know that I was drawn to those people. Like I knew I was an okay athlete, but I wasn't the starting quarterback. My friends, I had some friends who were really good. But I definitely like I think like almost all kids, I was like, I'm different. I don't belong. This sucks. You know what I mean? Like my son's going through it now. My son's 13 and you know, everything is like unbelievable to him. Right. And it's like, I want to get so mad at him for being so like kind of a jerk, but I was that way and I'm kind of still that way. Right. Like he's coming out of his room and I'm like, are you about to take a shower? He's like, I don't know. Am I? And I want to fucking smack him. But I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, in many ways, my life almost didn't even really start until like I feel like in many ways till like I started doing this and got married and like started having my kids. Like the rest of it's kind of a blur. You know what I mean? I partied a lot. You know what I mean? Like I got to see the country as a stand-up comic. I'm really grateful for that. Again, like nobody heard of me. I never made any real money, but I have amazing life experiences. And I did get to work with, you know, like comics that I watched on TV, and you meet comics that you then kind of stay in touch with. Remember, I got one of my first weeks on the road, I got to open for Bobby Slayton, and I knew Bobby Slayton from TV, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm working, I'm getting paid a couple $100, whatever it was, but I'm working with this guy who I think is really funny.
Yeah, Bobby Slayton came out of the Bay Area. Bobby Slayton, always just like the bulldog of comedy. Bobby Slayton.
Right.
I loved working with him too. Yeah. So
well, and it's so funny because he was like, you know, obsessing about like the numbers, which I would be too if I was a name, I guess, but I never had that problem. And so he's like, what's the door looking like? And you know how it is in comedy. It's like, I don't know. There's a big prom this weekend, or, you know, there's always something that the club owner's apologizing for. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Bobby Slayton, though, he was one of those first comics that I knew of that wasn't like, again, he wasn't media famous, but he could fill a room just by his reputation of being a comic on the road. He would fill a room. He was one of the first guys that I knew that did that. But so you came to here. Now you're a dad with 3 kids. Right. Yeah. 3 kids. You talked about the one. What are your kids' names?
So Emma is, people listen to my show that are listening, which I'm sure some people, like my kids have become kind of like part of, because they'll walk by and get on the mic or whatever.
As they should be.
So my daughter, so Emma's 15, Jackson's 13, and River's 8, almost 9. And yeah, dude, it's like, I know there's plenty of people out there that don't have kids, don't want to have kids, and that's fine. But they definitely gave me purpose in a new way. Right.
Yeah.
Like I was very, my life was unmanageable in a lot of ways. I was broke most of the time. And something about getting married and having kids was like, well, okay, somebody's got to pay this rent. Like, let's make something happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely give you perspective. You know, I got married like about a year and a half ago. And
yes, I did. I met your wife.
Yes. And I have a son, Christy. Yes, you have. But fortunate, like you said, I mean, it does change your perspective on the world. And now I can't be like this kid just running around anymore. I have to be responsible. But and he's 15 when we got married, 16 now. And I recommend to anybody, if you're going to have kids, let them come out at 15, man. Because that is the best time. You know, I'm telling you right now, boy. Tell the wife, can you just hold on to that for a few more years? Get
all that like diaper shit out of the way. And
yeah, all of that stuff, all the terrible twos or the whatever, the rebellious time. You know, certainly teens have their rebellious time. But Makai, he's a great kid, a great human being, and I don't know, maybe that's not how it really is, but to me, it's like, wow, man, I should have had these kids a long time ago. You know, once again, if they all came out at 15. So well done being a dad. Probably your greatest achievement of everything you've done so far. You know, so
probably,
yeah.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I just want them. I want them to be successful. A, because it's good for them, and B, so they'll take care of me. Like, you know, a little payback. Come on, like. Let's give some love back this way.
Are they into the OCR thing?
So the boys have come with me since they were little. And now it's like, it's 50-50. It's like, do you feel like coming? And they'll say no. And sometimes I'll drag them anyway. And then they're glad they did. My buddy, JD Allen, people in the Mutter community might know him. Him and his son meet us a lot of times, and then they'll be more likely to do it. But we've tried like every sport, and none of them, like, let's just see if they like this. And none of them have like quote unquote stuck. And so, you know, I always told myself I was never going to be a parent that was like, you have to do this. So it's like, they've tried, you know, all the sports, soccer, flag football, tackle football, like they've tried them all and nothing's really. So I might not have any athletes in my family, and that's okay. Emma did track for a season. It was awesome. So Emma did track, and she did the mile. You know, her friend did track. and we live in the city, so like not a lot of white girls in the track team. So she wasn't going to be the fastest 400 or 800. So she's on the mile team. And then even on the mile team, like probably not the fastest. And it was hilarious because like she would like run by and like, you want your kid to wave. And so she'd like wave. And then I realized that was kind of all she liked doing. Like lap 2, same thing. Hey parents, you know what I mean? She didn't care if she fucking won or not. So yeah, not looks like my kids are not going to be athletes, and that's okay.
That's okay. They're gonna be great kids, man. They got a good dad. I'm sure your parents, when you were, you probably don't know it, but they're, oh, look at my son. He looks awful out there. Yeah, son, pay attention.
I was no, dude. Football was my jam when I was little. I stopped at high school because I got afraid, and it's like honestly my only regret in life. They say not to have regrets. Is I wish I'd stuck with it to see how it could have gone. I mean, I wasn't going to go pro, but I loved football. Like I played middle linebacker, right? So I was just flying all over the place, and like
it may have been like a blessing that you stopped, because now we hear about the concussions and everything, and you played back in the days when everything was walk it off, just walk it off from the coaches.
Dude, you're big. You had to have played sports. You had to have played ball, right?
No, I played it like in recreation or out in the streets. My brother was a tremendous athlete. He was great, and he was sort of satisfied that competition thing from me because I'd go up against him and stuff like that. When I got into high school, that was sort of when I got drafted into choir, music, and drama, because the teacher that came in to that high school the same time I did, it was his first time there, and I was in his piano class, and he just drafted me. So I went that way, instead of going the sports. Otherwise, I would have been in the sports way and probably, be suffering all kinds of concussions like you could have been also. So no, I was a good athlete.
I've never asked you this. Are you a gym guy? Because you're fit. You mean?
I was in the fitness world. Been doing the fitness world since, again, the 80s. And like you said, I've always been athletic because I'm always out there, street ball, whatever. So yes. And I was very good at whatever I did. Wasn't the best, but very good at everything that I did. And I was very competitive. I had that against me, which is so funny because now my attitude is like when you were talking about your daughter, I'm thinking, hey, dude, it doesn't matter if she was the fastest or anything. You know what I say? Nobody's better than your best. So that's the proudest thing I would be when I watch my son now. He's awesome. He's a great athlete. He's from the lineage of the Culpeppers. Remember Dante Culpepper?
I do remember Dante Culpepper.
Yeah. My son's related to that family. He's from that family. So, yeah, it was like, I did athletics and all that kind of stuff. Same story as you, pretty similar, but got drafted into this part of it, the media part, and then I always loved to communicate. I was also, as a little kid, loved sitting on the porch telling kids stories, and including them in improving stories, So this sort of like, I think was my road, if there's such a thing as destiny, and perhaps for you also. So let's do this. Because I can talk to you all day long, man.
For sure.
So you did the Warrior Dash, but when did you do your first Tough Mudder? Did you do Tough Mudder first, or did you do Spartan first? Because I feel like both of those are your home team.
Yeah, I did. So I did a Tough Mudder first. My friend Dominic in the fall of 2011 said, I'm going to do a Tough Mudder. Like we were doing goals for like the next year. And I was like, that shit looks terrifying, right? I can show you the video. I can still find it. That is the one that I watched over and over and over again. And you're in it and your voice is in it. And I was like, this looks terrifying. But my friend Dominic was fatter than me. And I was like, he's out of shape, but he's going to do it. Let's do it. And so then 10 of us did it on a very, very, very cold February morning in 2012, back when Tough Mudder later moved it to April. But for a couple years, it was here. It had come here, I think, already once in 2011 in February. They brought it back and we signed up. And when I woke up that morning, the temperature said 28 degrees. And all I could think about was, I know I'm going in that ice bath. I'm like, that's all I could think about was, I got to go in that ice bath. And it was in mile 1. And we jumped in, and I'm telling you, like, my DNA changed, right? So scary, so terrifying. What's going to happen? Come out of this thing and like, woo, woo. Y'all had a fire pit. You actually had burn barrels going to keep us warm. And it's nice how this comes full circle. Much like getting booted at the Black Club, I literally thought, we just did the hardest part. Like, the rest of this is going to be great, because even though we're going to jump off water again, which we did, you had to walk the plank in a little lake, it wasn't going to have ice in it. So that was it. We finished, and it's funny looking back now, like, now when I finish an event, like, we all hang out, like we had like the last wave on Sunday. You know what I mean? We were like, there was like nobody left. It took us 4 hours and nobody left. We're just standing around with our little jackets on. And then I did my first Spartan a couple months later. But I often think, if it was a normal day, if it was a 70-degree day, would it have been as impactful, right? Like, would I have had this sort of life-changing experience coming in and out of that ice if it wasn't, like, it was 28 when we started, so maybe it was 34 by the time we came out of the ice, you know what I mean? Like an hour later. It was a cold day.
Yeah, and back then, Georgia, you're talking Georgia, right?
Yeah, it was February. It was freezing.
And Georgia was muddy. I have pictures of those back in those days where I'm just drenched with mud. I used to go to the finish line after I was done with the start back then. I used to be where Clinton is now. I used to be there at the electroshock waiting for you guys to come in, but just muddy. And like you said, yeah, cold. The weather played a big part of it. I think it's okay, because there are people now that do it in like these desert areas out the Southwest, and they feel the same experience that you're talking about, so. No,
listen, you can have a great experience in any weather. I'm just saying, for me, it was life-changing. It was. I literally thought, I can do anything. Like, okay, I can do anything. I just did this thing that terrified me.
Yeah, you're like an old vet now to these kids that are doing it now, like in those nice weather and all that. So, you kids know nothing about the bush. You know nothing about the mud. We died. We lost our limbs. My brother, he was electrocuted. His eyes popped right out of his head. He picked them right back up and continued to finish. So then we were the shit, man. That's what you felt like, though, because it was new. Right. As far as I know, it was new. And back then, what I noticed too was, again, it was like heavy, even Tough Mudder, that heavy testosterone white man thing. You didn't see many women. You certainly didn't see many people of color there. But now, again, even with Spartan, you do see more diversity in it. You do see more women. You do see at these Tough Mudder events, it's like going to church, So you've seen this transition. Talk about that for me, your experience with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I can go by looking at just my own stats, right? Like my own, what do you call it? Stats analysis of like views and engagement and all that. So I think it's 64. My audience is 60-40, like men to women. But at one point it was like 15% women were the ones doing this sport, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think both Spartan and Tough Mudder were like, we got to get more women involved. And so they figured that out. If you remember, there was actually a bunch of women only races, and Tough Mudder actually launched their own for like a minute. Yeah, I don't know how many there was of those.
Mudderella.
But there's a Mudderella, which we can talk about. But there's another one that's come back, Muddy Princess it's called, and they're doing like 30, 40 events. So I think that's like a hopeful sign, because that's more of like a Warrior Dash beginner event. Did they have you host Mudderella? Were you the MC for that, or no?
No, they when they came up with
we want different energy. We want different energy for Mudderella.
Yeah, because they wanted like yoga at the warm up and all that kind of stuff, and they didn't see that in me, So I'm it would have been interesting, but I'm glad I stayed with what I was doing. So
right. I mean, I think they did 2 of them. Maybe they did 3 anyway. But people always ask me like where I see this going. And I always say, I wish I knew. I could probably like have more money if I like could predict the future. And we've had these ups and downs, and people are, I feel like, really down on it now. Like, oh, it's like, but people have been saying we're dead literally since 2016. When Battle Frog went away in 2016, people were like, oh, well, OCR is definitely dead. So we are not. And I don't think it's going anywhere. I think, I just did a Tough Mudder in England. It was fantastic. You know what I mean? I did the Spartan in Georgia this spring. It was great. The numbers have not returned to the pre-pandemic numbers, but we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, remember, people also said rock and roll is dead back in the days. Look where that's gone. Yeah. And
Right.
see,
Rap
even saying
rap was going to be a fad. Remember when they said rap was going to be a fad?
Yeah. Let them get it out of their system. You know, go ahead and let them complain. You know, and that's my point. You travel all over the world for the OCR events, so you do have a perspective on what it's like doing it in the States, what it's like doing it over there in the UK. I believe you even went to Iceland with.
I did. I did go. So I went to Iceland. I actually did a race in China. I did a race in, let's see, Barbados, Bermuda. I've been to the Middle East. It's pretty awesome. Like I said, I don't think it's going.
Is there a big difference in the vibe, or is it? I know it's got to have something that we all have in common, but is there like a different flavor to it, as we would used to say?
I would say that you get, like, there's people who do it elite and there's people doing it for the first time, and so you get the gamut that way. Like, you get like people, like, it's smiles. You know what I mean? You can't do this and not smile. So I was in England. It's just reminded me of a piece of content I need to make. In England, the mud mile ended where people you were on your ass no matter what. You couldn't help it. And so I just sat there and filmed people going down that hill. Like, they'd sit on their butt and no one's unhappy. You know what I mean? And I definitely made sure to take a moment to take in. At one point, people stood up and, like, they're throwing mud at each other. And it's like, you are not thinking about some fucking call you got to be on. You are not thinking about if you got enough to pay the rent this week. You know what I mean? You are being like a kid. And that's the part that I think we forget, because you and I were at these events every week. I mean, I think you probably stay really connected because people come up and, like, put their hand on your heart and talk to you in that way, because that's the energy you bring. But for a lot of us, sometimes I think we just forget, like, oh, here's another race and blah, 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 and let me go interview the winners or whatever I'm doing. But I try to take the time to go, okay, like, you don't get this shit anywhere else. You know what I mean? You can't be standing up, smiling, and throwing mud at your friends and be thinking about anything else but being a kid.
I feel like it can become a sort of a global community, you know, and again, not just the Tough Mudder community, but the OCR World community. You know, it's like these athletes and then the people that do it. This is one of those events where you can be out there with the greatest, with the best, you know, out on a course with them. You know, you can't be out on a basketball court. I mean, you're pretty damn lucky if you happen to show up at a court where, you know, the best players in that sport, that particular sport, baseball, are playing, and you get to hang out and play with them. But this is one of those, and they are people from the community. So I think there is a world connection that you can make with the whole OCR world. That's what I'm about, man. That's what I feel. And that's what I want to nurture. Again, you got that part of it because you know the community very well. We all know you. Your DNA, as far as I'm concerned, is a part of the foundation of the Mudder community. But you also, again, have a connection with the top athletes in this sport. Do you remember your first athletes in the beginning that you looked at? You're like, wow, that person's a beast.
The first thing I remember is when I would interview. So the early days when Amelia Boone and Jung Young Pak would win these races, right? And they outlast everybody. And I would go up to them and be like, cool, how'd you do that? And they don't fucking know. You know what I mean? Like, and I've seen that throughout history. Like, if you listen to Tiger and Tom and Brady and all those guys, they'll talk about their work ethic, but they can't explain it because it's who they are. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, Sean, why are you funny? It's like, you know what I'm saying? You can't really explain it. So that was what I remember, because we all want it. We want them to say something that means, like, that teaches us the magic bullet or the secret. But I definitely remember being inspired by those guys in the early days of watching them just, like, go out for one more lap. It's 2 a.m. Something's hurting. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you going to keep going? You know what I mean? They're like, of course. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you're ahead by 2 hours. I don't care. I'm going to keep going. And, similarly with the old days of the death race, like these people are up for a day and Joe says, carry this. And they go, cool, what's next? Like they're just down for it. And so I definitely remember like being nervous approaching people like early on because I definitely looked up to them in a way. And then, I did become sort of part of the fabric, as it were. And so it's nice. It's only now in doing stuff like I started going to some different events where nobody knows me, and it's a lot harder. You know what I mean? When people know you and you come up to them, it's a lot easier to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely remember like Atkins and I joke about it. The first year he won it in 2013, like we were like, well, this guy's going to flame out because Jung Young's the best guy we know at it. And no one's ever done it like him. And so I was just like, how are you doing this? And Ryan was eating canned peaches. He had no pit crew because it wasn't allowed. And he'd go back out for another lap. And then he won with time to spare. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember Ryan too. And because I didn't know who he was at the time. Again, I was all about the community.
I didn't either.
And like you said, I felt like I didn't want to get in the way of the top athletes because they were out there competing, so I didn't want to bring any crap to them and let them stay focused and all that stuff. And I remember hearing Ryan's name every time coming through. This guy, Ryan, he's coming through. Ryan, I didn't know who he was, but I saw this other guy that was coming through all the time and was picking up in places. And I'm like, they're talking about this Ryan guy. They should be talking about this guy. And it turned out Ryan was this guy. I just didn't know it. Yeah. So there was my head in it again. I'm like, this kid is awesome. I don't know who this Ryan guy is, but this kid, I got to give him a hug when he comes in. So yeah. But once again, now it's grown again. Like we said, boy, you got these. Again, excellent athletes that are in there. Who are some of the top athletes now that are doing it now?
Well, I think we all were waiting, like where are the young guns? Where are the new people going to be? Because there was a time where it was kind of a lot of the same people. And again, we're only a 10-year-old sport, so no one we knew grew up wanting to be an obstacle racer. Nobody we know, like there's no. Oh, I mean, you will hear. Like, I think Mendoza said that, like, he saw World's Toughest on TV and wanted to try it. There's a few of those stories. But so now there's this whole slew of young athletes on the Spartan side that are making it really exciting. We all love a deep field. Like, even if like Lindsay is still the best woman, right? And she's got new competition, this woman, Emma Cook-Clark. But even if it's just those two, like, okay, cool. These other like 6 or 7 people could finish in the bottom, right? So one of the OGs, Hobie Call, his son, Hawk Call, we were all like, is he going to be any good? Well, it turns out he is, right? There's this guy, Rylan Shedek. You should definitely watch. I don't know when this is coming out, but I'm sure it'll be out either shortly after. It depends, but this North American Championship that's about to happen, you're going to see some of the best names. VJ was like a newcomer, but now he's like 3 or 4 years in. He's still super young. So it's a really exciting time to watch this sport.
Is there a majors for OCR now? Like you said, the World Toughest.
It's funny. We talked about that years ago. Like there kind of should be. Right.
Yeah.
So there's OCR World Championships put on by Adventure. There's the Spartan World Championship, and there's World's Toughest Mudder. Like those are kind of the World Championships. I will say, and I have said this famously now for the last couple of years, I feel like now that Spartan and Mudder are one company, they should ditch their 24-hour race because it's kind of a weird thing, and they should just go all in on World's Toughest. Like they have ultra races, and there should be an ultra championship. But it should be the ultra distance, the 32-mile, 50K distance, and leave World's Toughest to Tough Mudder, a 24-hour race, because it's just weird. Spartan just doesn't quite feel the same. So they have one. They'll have one this year. But I think they should just go all in and be like, hey, listen, Spartan doesn't put one on, but Mudder does, and it's amazing. And this is the vibe, and this is the community. And anyway, But yeah, there's no official anything, dude. We're still 10 years in. There's no official anything.
There needs to be.
Maybe
maybe I'm old school, but there needs to be 4 of them. There needs to be the majors of OCR. And I feel
and
like
then you can have the slam.
3. Yeah, the slam, exactly. Right. And everybody loves their bling. You're carrying all 4 first places this year. Of the big events, man. Yeah, so maybe from our lips to some entrepreneurs' ears will happen. But again, it's opened up to like these great, and I still feel the same way when I see these guys and gals, they're running by and they're doing these phenomenal things. For me, it's like looking at, I've said it before, Cirque du Soleil, where I'm like, holy cow, human beings can do that? Yeah, and I say this, I was saying this to somebody else, where I love people being at their best, and I love great athletes. I love watching them. And that's what I get from our athletes, our top athletes in these OCRs. And I think it's just as important what they're doing because, I'm always promoting the whole community, looking out for one another, loving those people that stop and give somebody a helping hand, which I thought Ryan was the first one I saw bring that into competition, still out there looking out for everybody. But with a lot of these athletes, I still see that. And I think even if they're not doing that, Evan Paparis was one of the first, again, I would say one of the elite runners, where he used to come in through the finish all the time at the World Toughest events. And, Clinton and I were always out there, and he didn't even see us. So like that, man, just run right by us. And I always left him alone. And I had somebody say to me, man, these guys are like selfish and all that. I'm like, no. He's focused, man. And what he's doing is just as important as anybody out there helping anyone else, because he's inspiring the hell out of a lot of people that are seeing him and these top athletes perform like they are. Because once again, when I see them, I'm like, okay, I got to get off the couch. I got to get out there. I'm motivated to, again, get physical, be out there, being my best. I don't know how it is for you, but you get to talk to them. You get to understand their mentality and all this stuff. And it's got to inspire you somewhat too.
Yeah, there's definitely times where I'll be on my like weekly run and start to have like whatever thoughts and be like, man, I just covered these people running for 24 hours. I can put a little bit extra in, and knowing them like personally is a big thing too. You know what I mean? Like I remember I was interviewing Woodsy at the Atlanta Toughest, and he, I think, finished second, and he started tearing up. And it's not really like him, and he couldn't understand why. Yeah. And so it's like it makes me tear up. Like you know what I mean? Like experiencing greatness and being up for many hours brings your defenses down a little bit. But yeah, I've shed many a tear, especially at 24-hour plus events because of these guys and gals.
Yeah. Well, they're out there like anybody else. They're feeding a hunger that they have and something that's very deep in them. So if you feel like you achieved that in whatever you're doing, it's got to be an overwhelming feeling. So well done. I have my my theories of what motivates and all that stuff. But again, that's for another conversation you and I may have. Before I let you out of here, you wrote the book. Tell me what your book's about.
Well,
because I haven't seen the physical book. Where can I get this book?
I believe it's on Amazon right now. If you want to get it, it's got some outdated information, but it's funny because when they came to me and said, would you like to write a book about training? And I said, I'm not really the training guy. I'm more of like the history and the like daily news and information and kind of archiving what's happening. They're like, well, how about we do both? I said, cool. How about I get people who are good at training to write the other chapters? And they were like, cool. Now it turned out it was really smart because I only had to write half a book. So if you check the book out, there's a chapter on, grip strength written by, I honestly don't even remember. I'd have to go and look. And there's chapters on endurance written by endurance athletes and with a little bit of my input. But yeah, if you want to buy it to own your piece of OCR history and, I think learn a thing or two, I'll happily sign it if you want to bring it to a race. But yeah, it's called Down and Dirty, which by the way, I didn't pick the title. I wouldn't have picked the title. There's a lot of things called Down and Dirty, including things that are like not so nice. Down and Dirty, the essential training guides for obstacle racing and mud runs. Yeah, you can get yours on Amazon. I had some for a while, but I finally got rid of them all.
Yeah, I got to get me an autograph version.
But where you should go is obstacleracingmedia.com for sure. And then that has links to our Instagram, our YouTube, the podcast, which you so mentioned. We're at 10 plus years, 700 or 800 plus episodes every week.
Yeah. You know, you made me think about stand up again when you were talking about you got your information and even though, like you said, the sport has grown and some of the stuff may be dated, but some of them are still very essential, as you say in the book. But you went and got that information, you know, because we don't want to sit there and say, yeah, look at me. I'm an expert at this stuff, you know. But it made me think of like with Billy Crystal, because people say in comedy, they always ask us comedians, they'll say, oh, were you the class clown? Were you the class clown? That's
right.
How people see comedians. And Billy Crystal, I remember in an interview, he put it, I think, the best. He goes, I wasn't the class clown. He goes, you know that guy that would run naked through an assembly, you know, when we were in the auditorium? And the person was like, yeah. He goes, I'm the guy that talked him into that. And I'm like, yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Yes. And the same here. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about with your book. You know, you got the knowledge, you got the information, you know who to go to, what's right, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
This ain't going to be the last time that we talk. You know,
certainly not.
Yeah. I got to have you on here over and over, especially when we're coming into these all these world championship competitions. You've got knowledge that I need, and I certainly you're getting it across on your media. But I want to bring you back on here too, and have you talk to all those people that again just come to the church of the OCR world.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it, man.
Before you get out of here, I do have my 2 questions that I ask of all my guests.
Okay.
Fun questions. Yes. Okay. One is from a quote that you know so well, the one that I got from a gentleman named Craig. Remember, I got to visit Craig in the hospital just before he passed away of cancer. He is the one that gave me that great quote. His family said that he got it when he got diagnosed for the last diagnosis that he got. And it was his way of just living, enjoying life, putting everything into perspective. So he had this quote. He passed it on to me. I brought it back to the Mudders. The Mudders made it so popular that it became a song by Darius Rucker. We know that. And I got to say this again. I've said this before. The cool thing about that, because I'm going to find Darius Rucker and talk to him. But the cool thing about that was at our last World Toughest Mudder in Laughlin, without any doing of any of us, right across the street, literally performing at the amphitheater, was Darius Rucker. And he sung that song. I think it was around like 10 p.m. at night. So every Mudder there heard that. The quote is, and the question, go ahead. You're going to say something. What are you going to say? You're
on our videos saying it. And so I hear it, like specifically, I think the first or second Vegas one. When's the last time you did something for the first time? And so like it's ingrained in me. If you want to listen, man, I don't know what kind of God or fucking magic you believe in, but I'm in Laughlin, okay? And the race is happening, right? Tough Mudder. And I'm like, and I hear Darius Rucker. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes.
Like, and I knew that meant everyone running around was hearing it. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't running. I was doing media or whatever. So I don't know who you believe in or what you believe in, but that's some magic shit right there. Because again, we picked that venue a year in advance or whatever, and he literally was playing across the street. It wasn't just like, oh, he's in Laughlin tonight. He was like there. Yeah. So anyway, to answer the question.
Wait, let me say this real quick. Because you and I were talking when we were there because we knew he was in town. And I was saying we were planning this thing that we were going to find out what hotel he was at. We were going to go there, pretend we were like, I don't know, like cleaning rooms or something like that. So we could steal in there and get an interview and tell him about all this stuff. It was going to be, and right. we should have filmed the whole thing, you know? But
to answer the question, I can tell you, maybe I'll think of it as I'm saying it, but I can tell you that at this most recent Tough Mudder in England, right? I was thinking as we were getting to certain obstacles, I was like, I don't want to do Arctic Enema, right? But then I do kind of hear that, right? Like, well, like it's certainly not the first time, but it's like it's been long enough. You know what I mean? Like once you do it, and the same thing with electroshock, which was the hardest I've ever been knocked down. I know people have different feelings about that, but that one is scary again. Like the ice water wasn't even that big of a deal, but like if you stand in front of EST, right? And the longer you stand there, the worse it gets, right? And I'm like, I don't want to do. And it's like, well, that voice will come up for me. That when's the last time? I'm trying to think of the actual last, like for the first time. Yeah. I'm trying to think when it was. It might hit me after the show. I don't know, but I can tell you that your words and those words, even if they're not yours, did come to me in England. So we'll let that one go for now.
Okay, yeah, that'll be on the next one, to be continued on that one. And my final question to you, again, so you're out there doing what you're doing, maybe at some OCR event out there in the mud, the dirt, and you might even be interviewing somebody, but you look down and there it is, a lamp sitting right by your feet. Pick it up, it's muddy, you wipe it off, like most people do with the lamp. Out pops me, the genie in the lamp. Been in there for millions and billions and trillions of centuries. I am so grateful that you finally freed me. That, Matt, I am not going to give you 3 wishes. I'm going to give you the ultimate gift. I am going to give you the best gift in the world. I'm giving you the ears of the world right now. Right now, you have the world's undivided attention.
Woo!
In this moment, Matt, what do you say to the world?
Just love each other. You just surprised the shit out of me. I just surprised the shit out of myself. That's what I want.
That's a beautiful. That's as great as anything I've heard. So
but I needed to hear that today. Yeah. But I needed to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know. Like that's the first thing that came up, and then my brain was like, "Don't say that." And then I was like, "No, you should say that. Don't be afraid." So I said it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Matt, you probably need." I can be skeptical, hateful, resentful. I can be all those things. So yeah, just love each other, everybody.
Yeah, that's great. We'll end on that. I think that's perfect. Matt B. Davis, thank you very much, sir. And to be continued.
You're very welcome.
You can find Tough Mudder on Facebook and Twitter. That will be at Tough Mudder, or on Instagram, also at Tough Mudder. Please remember you can find this podcast, No Excuses, on wherever you listen to podcasts. Guys, subscribe. Let me know what you like, what you're not liking, and I will be including you as much as possible and even more in the future.
Inspirational.
Inspired.
Inspire.
No excuses.
Motivational.
Be motivated.
Motivate.
No excuses.
No whining.
No quitting. Overcome.
No excuses.
Community. Teamwork.
Tough Mudder.
Tougher together.
No excuses.